Hey guys, what's up? This is Olive Hoy here. Welcome back to my channel. If this is the first time you're watching New York Resume, this is Becky Walsh week. I am here with Becky Walsh. She's a recurring guest on my channel. Very, very popular. I haven't told you that, Becky. Actually, the final analytics that I was looking at, people watch your interview longer than any of my other interviews.
Wow, that's great. We love that.
So Becky is a life change catalyst. She is an author, speaker, intuition expert. We're going to have a really fun, informational, and smart conversation on Monday. Yeah! Welcome to New York Resume. Becky, I want to ask you about the word intuition. What does it mean in 2017? Sometimes we get it in the context of like, oh, your intuition, follow your intuition, like a psychic, or intuitive design, like in the tech world, we also talk about it. How do people perceive this word, and what does it mean to us and to your clients when you're coaching?
Okay, so on BBC America and across the world, you must have met the phenomenon that is Sherlock Holmes. Yes! So the TV show coming from the BBC is just called Sherlock. It's amazing. I love this show. Anyway, so it was just been aired in London, in the UK, and I'm going to read you a quote. And this is Shakespeare. So it says, by the pricking of my thumbs, which is a way that Shakespeare talked about intuition. And then he says, intuitions are not to be ignored, John. They represent data possessed far faster than the conscious mind can comprehend it. And I think that that's a really great way of looking at it. Intuitions are the way in which the mind can perceive information faster than we can consciously recognize it. So to me, in this modern world where we're going like, this is a really intuitive piece of technology and this is really intuitive. And it's amazing how we've gone from it being mother's intuition, where it's just something that was between mothers and babies, and how your mum would clip your ear when you got home from somewhere, knowing that you'd been up to no good before you even found out. Yeah. And now in the day of mobile phones, you just ring them and go, where the hell are you? But going back, it was always down to mothers, and now it's down to science and technology and Sherlock Holmes and investigation. And so I think that we're opening into a new dialogue, and where mindfulness has become the buzzword, which is just another fancy word in my mind for meditation. I have a feeling that the new buzzword that we're all going to be talking about in the next few years is intuition, because we're going to need it now more than ever before. And I think that this is going to be the next phase of personal development, that people want to know that they can trust themselves in a world where we are feeling that there's not a lot of trust going around. So we're going to take it back to personal trust. That's what I think intuition is all about.
Wow. So trusting ourselves. That's helpful in doing anything. Like a lot of my New York Realers, they are artists, creatives, entrepreneurs. Like whatever you're doing, you start with yourself. So it's really good if you can train yourself to be intuitive and
train yourself to
understand people more. Like, sometimes when you meet someone, you feel like I'm destined to meet this person. The universe placed this person here to meet me so that this can happen. What is this feeling, and how can we get more in tune with our own intuition and use it in our day-to-day basis?
Yeah. Well, some people think that that's blind, desperate hope. Like in the UK, we have these Eddie Stobart trucks. And if you're falling in love with someone called Eddie, and then the Eddie Stobart truck goes past, all of the sort of like new agers will go, it's a sign, I'm meant to be with Eddie, So,
I've never heard of that. That's so cute. We got to have a New York version.
Mack trucks in the US, so it's a similar kind of thing. But heart-led intuition, where we tend to think about it with relationships, but actually it's a lot more than relationships. And your heart-led intuition feels like a compulsion. It's like it's like a compulsion. It feels like we are just drawn to this person, and out of embarrassment we do absolutely nothing about it. We ignore it. We don't want to act like a weirdo. We don't want to look like we're sexually coming onto them, especially if they're pig ugly. If they're not pig ugly, maybe that would be an okay thing, maybe not. we are often pulled towards someone and it's got nothing to do with physical attraction at all. I think that we're biologically designed to go towards the things that heal us. And I believe that sometimes a person will give off a vibe, when we say, oh, I like the vibe of that person.
The vibe, the vibration.
Yeah, it's like a matching vibe where there may be the vibe between the student and the teacher. So you suddenly get compelled to meet somebody who is going to offer you something in terms of your own healing, personal development, something like that. Or you're the teacher and you found your student. And they always say when the teacher is ready or when the student is ready, then the right teacher or student comes. The trick is not to pass them by. So I did an experiment with this where I decided to talk to every single person that I had an intuitive compulsion to connect to. Oh, yeah, all of them. And sometimes I was asking the time. Sometimes I was just like, just kind of saying hi and trying to get into a conversation. Asking the time's a little bit difficult, but quite often they felt the connection too, so they lingered. And in that lingering, we managed to kind of find some way of finding out what that connection was. And sometimes I even said it. I even said, like, I feel really drawn to you and I'm not quite sure why. Can we have a chat? And that person...
What are their usual responses?
Well, you don't blurt it out completely, but it might be just like having a conversation. So one person that I got talking to, and we were like, oh, blah, blah, blah. Small talk, weather's been terrible. We love talking about the weather in the United Kingdom. Weather's been awful, or blah, 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 or what's the coffee like in here, or whatever it is. And then we'd get into a deep conversation really quickly. So we'd go from that to suddenly them opening up and telling me something about their life. And quite often, because it seems to me that I'm usually the teacher in these regards, I would end up that they'd be telling me something that I had the answer to. Could be something really simple. One of them was somebody was telling me that they'd just been diagnosed with having abnormal cells on their cervix. And I was like, oh, I had that. I said, well, actually, I did some research and apparently you can reverse it with folic acid and celerium. She said, really? I didn't know that. Oh, I'm going to go off and go and get some of that. I said, well, do your own research, do listen to medical advice, but do your own research, but give that a go. So suddenly that piece of advice was integral to what she needed to hear at that moment in time. So it's a really good idea not to pass these people by because you never know, that advice might be for you.
Wow. I mean, a lot of people think of this in the context of dating, relationships, but even in business, you meet your business partners, and wonderful circumstances. Everybody has a story. Even for work, that would be something that's useful, not to bury yourself and not look at everybody.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, if you read the CV, a curriculum vitae, something like that, a resume, somebody looks great on paper, then you meet them and you kind of have this reptilian response where you just want to move away from them. There's something that's jarring you where you're just like, oh, this just something that doesn't fit about this person, and so often we'll override it because we'll go, well, they look good on paper, they came across really well, is there something triggering in me that has some kind of personal prejudice, do they remind me of my math teacher who I hated at school, or what, I can't have a personal affront. And in a lot of businesses we're actually taught to cast aside anything that might come from a gut instinct because you don't want to be prejudicial. You don't want it to be coming from your own psychology or things that you believe. I mean, there's a lot of scientific evidence that women, and I know that, I've done a bit of research into this, that women will prefer a male doctor, even for gynecological stuff, because somehow we've been imprinted in believing that men do better than women or that men are better than women, which is crazy. If you are a woman, how can you believe that? So I get that it is really important to make sure that you're not coming from some kind of programmed prejudicial bias, probably one that you didn't even own yourself. However, I do also think that sometimes your gut does tell you who to move away from. And I usually counteract this by connecting with my heart, or even putting my hand on my heart and becoming curious and saying, well, what does my heart say to this? Because your gut might have some kind of prejudice, but your heart definitely doesn't. Using the two brains in balance can really be a way of working out who you want to move towards and who you don't want to move towards. And that can also be really good if it's the other way around, whereas you are having a blind, desperate hope moment that your intuition is telling you that this person that you fancy is for you, when in actual fact they're not. It's just the fact that you're making it fit. You're using your imagination to make it fit. So sometimes just putting your hand on your heart can give you the balance between the two things.
Wow. Because you're physically engaging it.
Yeah, you engage the gut brain and the heart brain. So you're not just responding because the gut brain's quite fear-based and the heart brain, of course, is love-based. Blend the two together and then you've got a balanced opinion. Whereas when you work from one or the other, it can be a little bit unbalanced.
Per what you were saying earlier, I feel like sometimes we can even look at a photograph and see someone with a beautiful smile and you immediately want to meet that person. You immediately think that you connected. Like, I remember my friend showing me, I'm dating this girl. I'm like, whoa, I like her already. I can tell, how her energy is. So pictures, somewhat reliable.
But look at what we're doing on Tinder. Like, no. Oh, yeah. And to be honest, I think people do it on the London Underground. You've got people coming up the escalators, people going down the escalators, and you're like going, idiot. Oh, wow. But people do that, like these snap stranger judgmental quips. And usually it's when you don't feel so good about yourself, you're looking at other people and trying to bring them down in order to raise your own value. That's basically what it is. So if you don't value yourself, a quick fix to that is if I drop someone else's value, then my value raises. And of course, that's complete and utter rubbish. But somehow that's what our ego tells us works. So that's why you kind of like, you're looking and you kind of, so when you're looking at people, strangers in the street, where you're judging someone on the bus, or you're looking at somebody's hair, or you're looking at what clothes they're wearing, what you really need to be looking at is, why am I not feeling good about myself at this moment? Because it's usually a reflection of how you're really feeling about yourself. But I certainly think that when you're doing something like Tinder, that there is that kind of, not good enough. And I'll, like when it comes to internet dating, I always tell my clients, look at the background, like look at where they've taken the photograph, because how they take the photograph, how they have presented themselves in their photograph tells you a lot about their level of intelligence and wit and charm and personality, just how they've shot the photo. She says, suddenly wondering what this room says about me. But nothing going on. But you can learn a lot from looking at the background, not just the person's eyes.
And that's a good tip. And I always feel that when I have, when someone comments on my video, if it's like a friend or if it's someone who has been watching me or reel and I have a good conversation, once in a while there are some comments that are like, whoa, what did I do to you? But I know it's more about that person than me. And I thought, if you are really a real asshole, like as much as you have projected yourself, you wouldn't be watching me get real. I think they definitely they're learning. They want to be a better version of themselves, but maybe they're having a bad day. And I usually reach out and say something that just in response to what they're saying. For example, if someone says that, I don't know what you're laughing about, or I don't know, this is not a good interview. And then I'll be like, oh, I want to be better too. Like I'll tell them like from my point of view, like as a real person, not as a channel. And usually their next response is a positive one. They usually be like, I wish I was there with you, or like, keep going, I do love your work. And that's really interesting. If we can do that in real life, to assume people are at least neutral or positive, or just hiding behind their
we have this
energy they project.
Yeah, it's angry education. So when someone's commenting like that, or they're throwing, firstly, there could be jealousy involved, which is that they're lowering your value in order to raise theirs. In other words, they're not making videos, or the videos that they're making aren't working, or they want to be doing what you're doing, but they're critiquing it in a negative way. That can be part of it. Another part of it can be negative education. So they want to tell you how they think it should be done, or what their education is, but rather than saying, hey, just to tell you, that this thing, and I think that this works, and it becomes like something positive that you're telling someone how they could improve or do it better out of kindness, it becomes out of meanness. So it becomes a negative education, which is like, I'm going to slap you down and tell you that you're bad and you're wrong. You have to wonder what happened to them in childhood. Like, if they learn education by being slapped down and told that they were wrong, that's how they're going to show up in the world. So you have to kind of wonder, did they get that at school? Did they get that at home? Because that's learnt behaviour. And so by you coming back at them with positive, loving behaviour, which is secretly what they're actually asking for, is validation, you're really doing some healing there, because that's a whole bag of pain. That's not somebody just wanting to be an asshole. That's somebody who's in pain, reaching out for help. They just don't know that's what they're doing. So you've got a really good solution for that. That's a really good way of doing it. Most of us can't be bothered and we just hit delete. I did that. I hit delete on a YouTube comment because I just felt, I could feel my energy depleting, and I was just like, I just can't be bothered with this. Because it takes a lot of energy to put out yourself, your views, your thoughts, to share through love, something you want to do. And then when you keep getting slapped in the face, sometimes you don't want to put your head above the parapet anymore. And I think that's yes. The danger of this stuff is people are emotional, loving beings. And there's only so much of that kind of negative responses that anyone needs to or wants to hear. So sometimes you just have to go, bye. You know, I'm not engaging with this. It's because sometimes you have to protect yourself as well. It just depends. It's a balance. You don't have to heal everybody. You have to pick your battles. And sometimes some battles are just not worth fighting.
And sometimes it's interesting that when I didn't say anything yet, someone else, you know, who's watching the video will join in and have a conversation and reply that person. Like, I also like to see when people connect and have real conversation.
Yeah, because it should be. And also, you know, with all of this stuff that's been going on with Brexit, with Donald Trump, with all of these things, we've really got into this thing of going, you're wrong, I'm not engaging with you. And that's really why we've ended up in the situation we've ended up in, which is we end up shooting people down and not having conversations with them. We have monologues at them. And social media, a lot of it is short monologues at people. We're not listening. We're not responding to what someone's saying. We're just shooting them down for being wrong, but we're not actually engaging in the point. We're not asking questions. We're not saying, why do you think that? You know, and those questions are really important questions. If you want to change somebody's perception, you have to understand their perception. Otherwise, you're just shouting at them. And we seem to have got into a very kind of like sort of shouty, sort of accusatory communication style, which I don't know who that's working for.
Yeah, that's a really good point, because people just find a chance to go through Facebook wall. What can I say? What can I comment? Oh, this is what I think, and you're totally wrong. And politics is something that I'm not usually getting deep into it, but it's now affecting our lives. So we do talk about it. We do think about, you know, what's going to happen this year, you know, to America, or the situation in the UK. It is affecting everybody's life. So I think going forward, it's really great to position yourself at a place where you see clearly who you are, what you're projecting, and moving yourself from fear to love, like you always
be
say.
The solution. Like, be the solution to the problems you're moaning about. Like, find a way to be the solution. You know, so individually, you know, because I think that's what we're calling for. And certainly you're right. I mean, when I lived in America about, 6-7 years ago, it was really impolite to talk about politics. I did it once. Everyone was like looking at me like, oh my God, like I was talking about like over dinner. And now that's really changed. And I think, because in the UK, we love moaning. So we talk about politics all the time. And I took that cultural deficit over to America and suddenly realized that it was really inappropriate. So, best shut up then. But, so that's actually, I think, a consciousness shift that's really good. I think it's a really, really good thing.
For people who would love to have a one-on-one conversation with you, where can they find you?
So you can find me on my website, which is beckywalsh.com. And I'm also on Facebook under Becky Walsh Stand Up Intuitive. And I'm on Twitter, BeckyWalsh.com, without the dot.
I have to make it to one of your stand-ups. I know there's one coming up. You do stand-ups and on intuition.
Yeah.
So it's February, right?
It's a whole bag of stuff. So it's a mix between doing stand-up comedy, live demonstrations of intuition, and mixing science with all of that. And it's never directed, the comedy's never directed at the audience member. It's always about kind of, what it is to be human, and observational comedy about people. So so it's good. It's a really good fun show.
We're going to get you to do one in New York City.
Yeah, too right. Yeah, I'm going to come and do that. That would be really good. Yeah, I'd love that.
I love this first conversation during Becky Walsh Week. Stay tuned for more tomorrow. Thank you for watching my conversation with Becky Walsh on New York Real Zoom. If you would like to have a one-on-one conversation with her, you can email her at becky@beckywalsh.com. Tell her you are a New York Realer, because that will get you extra discount. Head over to her website, beckywalsh.com, to see what other services she's offering during Becky Walsh Week. Monday, we talk about the people that we're drawn to meet and how intuition can help us make more instant connection. Tuesday, we talk about how we know what we know and why dyslexia can be a gift. Wednesday, we talk about how we can spot a lie in this overwhelming world. Thursday, we talk about reading your lover, how to use your intuition for a deeper sexual experience. Friday, we talk about raising your value, game, and stepping into your power. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button if you want to see more of my videos. Thank you so much for watching New York Real Zoom. I'm Olive Hui. See you next time. Never gonna love without you. Never gonna fade away. Can we get this shit together?